part two to my story, my timeline, my testimonial, my truth. Thank you so much for listening to the first part. If you're listening to this in chronological order, this is your first one. Again, I will be expressing my story, my actual journey, the truth of what my life actually has been. There is a lot of false narratives being spread, not just external to my family about me, but also internally from my own family. And that's what happens when you are raised in a parasitic, karmic, emotionally immature, narcissistic style family. And again, me calling out terms is just for people to start to understand that this is about vibration, okay? It's about knowing that my soul chose to come in high vibration, where we're from. Chose to come in at the bottom. And so to experience the complete opposite of unconditional love, so that by the time you get up to love again, that you appreciate it in the most profound way. That's how it feels it's going to be for me, because that's how it feels as I get closer and closer and closer. So we are back to me moving back to this state. I had just been arrested for a fake charge that was put upon me, a felony fraud. And for me, this was just shattering, because I don't agree with stealing and thieves. I don't agree with any of this. And so not only was this a complete opposite interpretation of my character, but it's something that is that makes it so that your 3D life then becomes very hard to navigate. When you have that type of felony on your record, people don't want to hire you. They don't, they think you're a thief. So why would they want to? I know that would deter me, especially with what I've been through too. So it's like, I get it, but it's like, no, that wasn't me. That was put on me. Okay. So I spend the first 7 days in jail. Out of the first 7 days, 3, I have no idea why I'm there. And I get out, and yeah, like I end up, while I'm in there, having an understanding that this was set up by a person I trusted, and thought was, cared for me. And they manipulated their way into, do this, because this was payback for this guy having to go to prison for stabbing me. This was his payback to me. So this is part of it. Because it continues. And this is the start of gang stalking, because I dealt with that. Okay. But also, okay, so I end up getting in this like probation type of situation where I find out that I can, because it would have been my word against this person's word, and I did not have the money to afford an attorney at the time, which if I had, I would have fought the case. But they wanted to put me with a public defender. And when it's your word against somebody else's and you're facing years in prison because of a charge, you're like, I don't like, that's scary. Because I'm not somebody that does well in jail. Being a highly sensitive empath, I'm a target for all the narcissistic psychopaths that are the majority of what is in jails and prisons. So it's so I'm on this probation program where once I finish it and I successfully complete it, they'll go ahead and take off this charge from my record. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, that's my saving grace. Like, at least I can get this thing taken off. Granted, it sucks. I have to go and put all this money into this, and, and it's taking away from my life, because now instead of me, because the other part of me going out to the state is I was going to go back to the Eastern Chinese Medicine School. I had found out that they had now accepted student aid, student aid, and I could go back. Yeah, I could go to the school. I was going to really put, my full effort into really busting into my spiritual, holistic energy coaching and teaching. But I wanted to go back to this school. So what had happened was, I'm excited. Oh, but I have to put all my attention into this the probation. So now I'm stalled because it's a 2 year. So now I'm kind of stalled. So I'm like, that's fine. I'll just still kind of, do stuff on the side, because all my finances as well are now being taken and put towards, I have to put it towards this. I can't put anything towards schooling. And I tried to still see if I could make it work, but there's things that start getting in the way, and that'll be coming to the light here soon. So I, again, in this state, after just, being released from jail, understanding that I get started on this probation program and I'm moving forward, I'm working, I'm trying to, do the things, working through it. And then I meet this random guy, kind of just floats into my life. I was not attracted to him at first. And I was really trying to not be with anybody. This was going to be the first time I was really going to try to just be like, okay, like I just spent so many years being, so codependent. I wanted to try to learn to not be codependent on people and be there just for me. And then this person, this we'll call him a psychopath at the moment, comes into my life. And because at the time I was still able to, anyways, I meet him. So I had been trying to get into that school. I was working at a restaurant serving, because again, I was trying to kind of get myself set up in a way so that when I could start going back to school, my life would be allowing time for me to do this. And that meant that I always wanted my fallback job, and my way that I was incurring money, to be from serving or bartending, because then it left a lot of open time so that I could have time to study and go to school. So I had the intentions were to cut back in drinking again, obviously, and to get rolling in my healing purpose. This guy that I met again in the same month, June 23rd of 2017, and this is only after a couple of months again of just being back into this new state. This guy ends up dating me for 7 months to scam and con me, and it's what's called a sweetheart romance scam. Looks similar to catfishing online, but you do this in person. So, I mean, this person was with me all the time, but he had a family on the side, like a whole family. And but he was with me all the time. So he would start fights with me during like special occasions and holidays to try to make it seem like I was starting something with him, so that he had a reason that he could leave and be gone for as long as he'd want. And so this is where, so after he dates me for 7 months, and then he ends up crashing my vehicle in a car accident where my arm breaks, and actually I still have the bruise to this day, spiral fracture to my humerus, and in this he totals my car, and my arm breaks. And during this moment of this accident, the cops tell me, as I'm in the ambulance, they say, how do you know this person? And they were trying to understand the level of, intimacy that we had with each other, to know if this could go up to like domestic style, so that they could give him this charge of vehicular assault, vehicular assault, since my arm broke. And they wanted to, know if we were dating. And I had said, I was still trying to protect him. And I'm like, well, we're friends. I definitely wasn't trying to pretend like we didn't know each other. Why would I do that? That's stupid. We were in the middle of like a snowstorm in the middle of a canyon, as it was night. So, but what had happened is he told while I was in and out of consciousness, he was telling the police that he did not know me and he was not driving my car. So in the ambulance, when I come to, one of the times I come to, and they're taking off my shirt to get to my arm, one of the officers says to me, you need to understand you're dating a psychopath and you need to get far away from him. And I remember I was like, what? Like, because I'm all looped up on like the drugs that they were giving me at the time for the pain, but it always stuck with me. 2 days later, so they end up arresting him that night, and there's like the whole thing, like I'm in and out of consciousness, but when I looked back at the police reports and the things that he was doing, like there was a witness, and that witness came up missing during the trial, and so did the police officer that told me all that stuff, like weird stuff. And this is where I start to see the super dark underbelly of what is nasty within low vibrational, energetic, or parasitic energies. Um, so the accident happens, like I say, about 7 months into the relationship, and then it takes about 5 days for me, or relationship, quote unquote, because that's the other part. This was never a relationship. This was a job for him. I was a job. And the point was to steal my information and anything else of value. But information is valuable to hackers, black hat hackers, and con men and scammers. It's very lucrative on the dark net to sell your even your name. And I have a very common birth given name that I found out they like the common names, the scammers, because they can hide under them. These are some of the things that I was able to find out. So he ends up, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. Sorry. So the accident happens. He ends up in jail for a couple of days before I can get him. My car's totaled. And then 5 days, 5 days go by after kind of getting him, that I find out the truth. I start to unravel more. I find out that he was actually working on another person in tandem with me. There could have been more, but I found one, and I at the time thought he was cheating on me with her, but I now know it as this was another potential, victim. And so there were other things like I say, I found out that not only was this guy, he was scamming me. There was intentions. There was malicious intent for me. So I find this out, and this is a lot to wrap your head around, because when I told you guys in the previous video that I found out about the incest and was like, holy shit, I'm in an after school special, infinitely way more after school special, where I was like, what? Wait, so he was telling me he loved me. He was telling me that he wanted to be with me. He was with me all the time. And this was all just to get my information. And then I find out that this was also tied into the guy that ended up in prison, that this was part of this revenge plan that went way back years previous. And that this guy was sent into my life to do this, as well as the guy that came to that other state to come get me and bring me back to this state. Okay? So now we're in a space where I've realized who he is. I've kicked him out. I'm heartbroken because I'm also going, holy shit, I'm in love with somebody who doesn't exist. That's a hard thing to wrap your mind around. He's nickel and diming me. At the time, I didn't want to have a bank because I had been with Wells Fargo when all that bullshit went down. So I had pulled my money out of a bank and kept it in my place, and he knew where it was. And so they would break into my spaces. They would set up video and voice recording and tracking devices within my home space, within any bikes or vehicles or just any type of transportation, in all my electronics. And I don't know this until I start. These are things that I start to learn, and because this was part of how I was able to survive through this, because so he was facing a vehicular assault because of the accident. The prosecution had wanted me to testify. My truth, like my truth I'm giving right now, would have gotten him, I think, probably prosecuted for the actual felony vehicular assault, which was facing 2 to 6 years in prison for him. And that was just off that charge. So, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Okay. All right. So I figure this out. I kick him out. But because he's facing this charge and because prosecution wants me to testify, now from the moment that I kick him out, but it had started earlier, I now know, but for sure, that's when the gang stalking really started. And I now have an understanding of what gang stalking is. And I'll get into more videos about, what that looks like, because I know there's a lot out there, but I can actually give like specific examples of things that are done based off of my experience. So they also tried to human traffic me, whether it just be for kidnapping purposes, to put me in some sort of human trafficking ring, whether I don't know, drug mules, sex, I don't know. There were times where I'm pretty sure like I always felt like I was gonna be killed for like the next 2.5 years, because what I had found out, like I say, is they, if I'd leave to go to work or anywhere to go run an errand, they knew where I was going to be because I was being tracked by phones. And so at this point, from the beginning of 2018 up until today, well, at least up until 2020, I ended up having to change my number hundreds of times. I had to start using just burner phones because, like I say, I started realizing that they would find ways to insert tracking into my phones. And so it just became too expensive to have, expensive phones. So I had to downsize to burner phones. And then they would send people into my life to try to befriend me to make it. But this is how they get people into your space to then set up these tracking devices, and so, sorry, let me just look here a second. Hold on one sec. Okay, yeah, so from 2018 to 2020, because then he finally he extends his court case like hard. And I had all intentions of going to testify. I've never let somebody scare me enough to not stand up for something that I believe in, because I started going, if I could help one other person not have to have this type of trauma occur to them, that would be worth it for me to be able to speak up and, speak the truth, just the truth of what was happening. But the truth would have gotten him in trouble. So they were trying to threaten me and harass me. And like I say, I think there were times, and it was through this period that they realized that the threatening and harassing and the, very evidently breaking into my spaces, messing with my cats, stealing from me, nickel and diming me by taking my bikes apart or my vehicles. And if you didn't catch the, what they were trying to break down on you right away, it would take a free thing or a $5 issue and make it like $1,000 issue. So any money that you kept making, you had to keep putting into trying to fix things that they're consciously and actively trying to take away from you, to what I call nickel and diming you, making it so that you barely have any money to do what you need to do for yourself, and that you're just like surviving. That's the tactic. And again, I'll get more into like the specifics on all that kind of stuff in later videos when I do break down more information on this. But so so they had stolen all my accounts, all my email accounts, all my social media. So from 2018 on, they had taken over all my emails and social media accounts. And the one that I really had that was the one of most concern was Facebook, because I had, I think at that time, somewhere between 500 to 700 friends or something. So that's huge for con men like this, is because that's 500 to 700 potential new avenues of revenue for these people. So if anybody from my previous life that had contact with me through any emails or social media from 2018 on, I have not had any association to these accounts. So if you've gotten communication from somebody, just know they were a con person, and hopefully you were smarter than I was and were able to avoid getting pulled into their little trap and their little web. That was always my concern for people, but I every time I try to reach out to people, again, one of the things they do is they'll take over your communication, and they can make it seem like I'm calling somebody and have somebody impersonate me, or vice versa. They would have people call me and impersonate me and basically say things like, we're not helping you and things like that, making me think I don't have support. And they're trying to isolate you. They want you to feel like you have nobody to go to. And that's a tactic. That's, isolation. So I'm gang stalked, and potentially human trafficked as a way to stop me from testifying in his court case for the vehicular felony assault he was facing. I ended up so that total time period from when I met him, 7 years that we were dating, 7 months, sorry, and then 2.5 years of being gang stalked, right? So a total of about 3 years from the moment I met him to the moment where I start to feel safe again. Is I had to move 12 times because of being chased by these people. Like, they would, push me out. Like, once I knew that a space that had been compromised, I'd have to move. And so I was moving all by myself. At this point, it was just me and 2 cats. I lost the first of my 3 cats a couple years earlier. But so I'm down to, it's just me and my 2 cats. That is it. And I always had to move all by myself, because now at this point, they are systematically dismantling any support systems I have at all. Like, any that I had in that state, all my friends gone. And at this point, I'm not talking to my family, so they use that to their advantage. And but they're probably also doing things where they're trying to, what they call secondary scamming, which means that they are potentially reaching out to family and friends and impersonating me to try to scam these people. Again, I can get into more details on all this stuff, but so I moved 12 times in 3 years. I'm moving like on average every 4 months. So I'm downsizing. At this point in my life, I had been actively trying to downsize with purpose. But now at this point, I'm downsizing because they're stealing stuff from me, and also it becomes hard to move fast when you have more stuff. And so things get left behind. Not because you want to, but because you have no choice. It's survival. And so let's see here. Okay. I was just, yep. Okay. And so he was, like I said, so he was slowly taking all my valuables and important documents, birth certificates, social security cards, things like that, all my contacts. So when I did finally get to a point when I wanted to reach out to my family, that I was like, I don't care, like, that we're not talking. I need somebody to help me. Like, I'm scared at this. Like, I'm in fear mode. Like, I've never experienced fear in my life, like, that I can remember. And that was their intention. That's how you can try to control somebody, is put them in that state, as we all know what, powers that were are doing to, the general public. And so, so he took my contacts. So I remember there was a point I wanted to reach out to my family, and when I went to go try to find my contacts, it was missing. It was gone. And so, okay, I was living in fear and survival mode for 2.5 years, being gang stalked and almost human trafficked, and on numerous occasions. Now I really lean into alcohol and drugs now at this point, because I'm numbing out fear, because I, again, hadn't taught myself yet that I can't use that as a tool, and it would make things less scary for me. And that was, I had nobody, nothing, nobody. I had hundreds of police reports all over, and I'm not shitting, hundreds, you guys. But they had a way of, just giving just enough information, but not enough where, like, cops could follow through on things. And they'd always say, like, if you bring us more information, we can follow through. Like, I'd try to get them over when I thought people were breaking in at nights, and then they'd hear the cops and they'd leave, you know what I mean? And so then the cops would be like, yeah, you're just making this up. And so I literally felt like I had nobody, Because when you get to a point where you're like, wow, I don't even have the cops to be able to help me, that's scary. That is a scary moment because you're like, wow, something could literally just happen to me and nobody would know, nobody would care. And they knew that. They had isolated me to a point where, they knew if they tried to human traffic me or kill me, that nobody would know. They could play this off on something like, oh, she was, dealing with some mental stuff, so she committed suicide, even though I've never been anybody that's wanted to do that. So, like I say, leaned hard into alcohol and drugs. I mean, so much so that, like, I mean, I didn't even like drinking. I'd go into the liquor store and I'd be like, ugh, I don't even know what to get. Um, so, during this time period, as a way to try to keep my sanity, is even though I'm scared, I try to bust through this fear. And this is, I think, where my higher self really kicks in, is I begin educating myself in as much as I can. And I'm writing and journaling to also help my sanity. So I'm diving into understanding manipulation tactics, cons, scams, all the scams that are out there, so that I knew what could be coming at me. Again, knowledge is power. So it's like once you understand these things that they're doing at you, you can put yourself in a position to avoid being the victim of that. And so, again, all by myself. But so it's like I'd go to work, I'd come back, and then I'd sit there with my cats because I started realizing they were breaking in and messing with them. So I never felt comfortable leaving my spaces, especially even though I didn't want to. But yeah, so I'm educating myself on narcissists. Well, manipulations and manipulating, controlling, mind control all of a sudden brings in narcissist. And now I'm starting to research narcissism and go, okay, and this is what that cop meant. Okay, and really putting the pieces together. And then, seeing the antisocial spectrum and understanding psychopath and, sociopath and just like narcissistic qualities versus diagnosis of narcissism, and then unresolved mental illness and just all this stuff. And it's helpful because it's helping me try to stay one step ahead of them. And that was all I could do because like I say, I'd have to keep moving in order to try to get away from them. So I'm learning about anything and everything to survive: narcissists, psychopaths, manipulators, con men, scammers, and then the scams that they do. How again, how they would dissemble vehicles to nickel and dime me. Let me see here. I started. Oh yeah, like this is where I'm really starting to look into like the mental illness and do more research into bipolar at this time. I'm like, I'm having information coming at me about, because one of the questions I'd always ask is, why me? Why did this happen to me? Why? Well, I start seeing that a target for this is a target for this type of con men and black hat hacker and, narcissistic parasite is empaths, highly sensitive people. They're the targets for these master manipulators. And that's when I was like, oh, I'm an empath and I'm highly sensitive and in the most vulnerable, in unaware, unawakened way. So I was like, of course they were like, I was a target for them because I basically was like, here, come and eat. Like, here's really easy food for you. And I needed to understand how not to be that easy target. And this is why I say knowledge is power and why it's important to know who we're dealing with, the vibrational level, because, and then understanding that these low vibrations of narcissistic parasites are trying to feed off of empathic, highly sensitive beings' light. And that, you're just giving it to them by continuing to allow them to be in your perception, that you need to try to learn how to rise above them and let it go and not think of worst case scenario anymore. um, This is where I start understanding that one of their tactics is human trafficking and how they isolate. Because there was a town that I had lived in out of the 12 moves, and this town was, it's its own story. And I actually have, there will be a good story coming out about this particular town that I was in for 8 months, where the whole town is it's a dirty town, and human trafficking is very big. There's a lot of landmines up there, and this was a comment somebody had made to me while I was up there was, you know, one time when after work and we were having some drinks or something like that, and somebody comes up to me, a stranger goes, whispers in my ear and goes, you know, these mine shafts go really deep, so deep that you can't even hear a body hit the ground. I was like, what the fuck? What do you mean? Like, what? Why are you saying that? And so, yeah, things like that, you know. And that's, again, a tactic, a mind manipulation to try to obviously put you in fear mode to, again, make you more manipulated, being able to be more manipulatable. Or you get what I'm saying. So there's a grooming process, you know, and I, you know, researched into this. How they isolate you from friends and family. This was, you know, I'm just diving deep into this stuff because this is what would make me feel less fearful, is the drinking and or drug use that could have been used at the time, as well as trying to educate myself, because that knowledge is power is what saved me. Otherwise, I would have easily been tore down and been made to feel like hopeless, and that I had nobody, because I didn't. I just had myself. And I was saving me and my 2 cats from this scenario. So like I say, this particular scam is called a sweetheart or romance scam. So it was my 3-year survival. I knew that one of the silver linings that I took from that scenario was that I had gotten myself out of that and had talked to numerous people that were still currently in it too. And how they're like, it never stops. And I was like, that's not gonna, I'm not going to live like this forever. Fuck that. And so, one of my silver linings is I felt like I needed to experience, the reason I had to experience it in such a survival type of way, where I had to dig deep to figure out how to get out of this and how to rise above this, because apparently I was supposed to be the light to help others. And I remember saying, if I could help one person, just one, avoid this or help get them out of this, then it'll have made everything I went through worth it, you know? Obviously, I would love to help more, but I remember saying that back then. So, I'm gonna just recap some things here. So moved 12 times from January of 2018 to May of 2020, 12 times. To continue escaping from being human trafficked, potentially murdered, with only me and my 2 cats, as they are making it very hard for me financially. So a couple of the moves, I had to move into some motels, and they would break into these motels, and some of these low class motels too, by the way, are being ran by these kind of underground black hat hacker type criminal underground people. And just throwing that out there. I can talk more about that too. But anyways, so they were bribing, harassing, and threatening, manipulated anyone who knew me to not offer me support or help. And I had gotten proof of that, luckily, by somebody who had the courage to talk to me and tell me that that was happening. And I was thinking it was happening. I intuitively knew it was happening, but I could never prove it until finally somebody had, like I say, the courage to be able to tell me, yes, everything that you think is happening they are bribing us to not speak to you. And she goes, and I remember she goes, and so I'm so sorry, but I am not going to lie. I don't really want to get involved in this, so this will be my last communication with you. And that is what continued to happen. So then the thing I say again, that freaked me out. And while all of a sudden, while I was in that space going, God, if they're doing this to like strangers, my fear is that now I really can't go home. until I can get, or I can't reach out to my family until I know that these people are not on my case or not on my tracks anymore, because I don't want to bring this home to my family. I don't want to bring this negative, icky vibration, like low, parasitic type of lifestyle, that has wiggled its way into my life, into anybody that I love at home. So here I am again trying to take care of others when I'm not getting any help back from anybody. Because what they do is that they'll do what, like I mentioned before, it's called secondary scamming, where they will reach out to the person that they attacked and then go to their friends and their relatives and try to scam them, see who's, easily to get scammed from them. And ways that they would do this is by impersonating me and then doing to them what they did to me, stealing their identity, and then doing fraud things, trying to get them in trouble with criminal charges and such. Okay, so I educated myself and taught myself on all the ways that they tracked me: my vehicle, my electronics, my phones, my laptops. I definitely never realized don't use IoTs, Internet of Things. Don't use Wi-Fi as much as possible, because they can access through Wi-Fi. It's very easy for a hacker to hack into our house Wi-Fi's or Internet of Things. Sorry, excuse me. And that they were, implanting people into my life to implant video recording devices, as well as listening devices and GPS tracking. They began, I began working at a parts store to try to learn how to work on vehicles at the time, so that I could start to, because I remember, because they were doing it to like so much at the time, all the vehicles. And it was all I could do to afford, just to try to have a vehicle, because they kept taking things apart or making things need to be fixed and repaired. And I'd have to spend all my money in order to do that, in order to have this transportation. So I'm like, if I could know how to work on vehicles, because I started understanding that if I was to have caught this particular problem earlier, that I would have been able to fix it. And it's a game for them. They like to watch that, like, haha, if we just do this, and if she's smart enough, she could actually catch this and it won't be an issue. But if she misses it, whoops, I guess she's got a lot of her money she's got to put into fixing this now. Oh, her bad. And that's funny for these types of con men. So, like I say, I began working at a parts store to be able to try to learn how to work on vehicles. And and then I'm also making money. And like I say, for me, I enjoy learning anything new, and I'd always wanted to learn how to work on vehicles. So it was just kind of like a new cool thing. The only thing that was always happening when I'd have to downgrade or just change careers up in times like these is that I'd a lot of times have to take big pay cuts from what I was used to making. And so I had to learn how to live very simply, and had to be okay with that, which was fine, because again, it was really just about survival. And as long as I could have a place to roof over my head and food for me and my cats, and being able to take care of us in a very simple way, then everything was fine. Okay, so I started also at this time period, because I started realizing after working at this parts store, because they would send people into the parts store too to mess with me mentally. And it really started triggering panic attacks, and it made it hard for me to work with the general public. So I all of a sudden realized, well, I speak to animals. Let's start my community. Like, I had just realized I wanted to really start to use my cats as a way of teaching me how to learn how to love properly, in the way that I was hoping to try to do this with therapists. But again, this was my way to at least try to incorporate this type of learning for me to learn how to love. So I decided to start working with pets, because I'm thinking animal therapy. Plus, working with animals over humans, then I can actually be in a space where I can still, again, make money from this job, but it's reciprocated. Like, they're helping me, I'm helping them. And I've always had this special relationship with animals to begin with. So was like, let's maximize this. Now this step back into this type of career, because in order to hop into animal, being able to work with animals, you have to start at the bottom, which is working at a pet boarding or kennel. And I mean, I was making the lowest amount of money I've ever made in my lifetime. I think even before I started working at 16, that's not true, but it was low. Like, it was not a lot of money. And so, but it was so beautiful. And so I'm working these two jobs, one where I'm learning a new skill, one where I'm using it as like a type of therapy until I could get into therapy for myself. So I had already started to curate this life and this 3D life that was still allowing me to live and not be taken down, because that was the thing is they wanted me to not feel comfortable and to be in a space where they could then ultimately, human traffic me, get me to a space where I'm like, okay, I have no choice but take me. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Like, I never got to that point, so I'm not really sure what that would look like. Knock on wood. So, and it won't at this point because, yeah, too smart now. Knowledge is power, people. So, what had happened though was, yeah, I fell in love with this. This was perfect. And I had realized, like, wow, I would love to try to start up my own, like, animal healing, like, working with animals on top of, not just helping humans to heal, but helping animals to heal. Because animals, they're just naturally giving you unconditional love. And they're never mean like a human can be. And it was beautiful. I was making the least amount of money I've ever made in my life, but I was the happiest. And so at that part store I was working at, the universe sent me and this beautiful person together. Him and his wife had this house on the top of a mountain, and they had this their whole basement of their house set off as like a mother-in-law unit space as a Airbnb, and they hadn't had anybody in there. And when we met, he knew my story, knew that I had been trying to escape from this horrific scenario, and offers me a very, very inexpensive space to rent. And it ended up, so this is $1 million home I'm now able to live in on the top of this mountain with these 360-degree views of just this beautiful Mother Earth and mountains. And it was just, oh, you guys, it was so beautiful. These 2 years because it was like May of 2020 through May of 2022, these were probably my best years of my entire lifetime. I almost got emotional saying that because, wow, did I miss that? Like, not only did these people have this beautiful, clean, just in beautiful space that I could start to try to rebuild, not just my mental, but my like physically I was fine at the time, was exhausted, but mentally, I mean, I was as wrecked as a person could be. I could barely go to the grocery store without having a panic attack. And so my goal was, let's hunker down, let's get a therapist and start processing here. And just try to decompress, rest, heal, just try to make money as best as I can with the money that is coming in to try to rebuild my bank account again to get me back up so that I can start healing. And so okay, but up until this point, sorry, we have to back up a little bit. I had gotten my last DUI right before moving into this place. And when I had gotten this last DUI, I was in jail for 49 days because they thought, remember the felony fraud that I got set up on, and because there was a warrant out for my arrest for 5 years, the court saw that as I was a potential runner. Even though I kept telling them, I didn't know. How would I have known? I didn't do the thing. So I didn't know there was a fake charge being put up against me until you guys told me. And so what had happened is that when they arrested me, they thought I was going to run. So they put my bail really high, and I had nobody to help me. And I didn't have the money to bail myself out. So I ended up in jail for 49 days before my first court date, where they could finally set get me into what I ended up pleading to and all this stuff to release me finally. During those 49 days, this actually, because I had been being hard gang stalked, hard, so hard. So this is before starting the auto parts. This is before, this is right at the end of being in the scary mountain town where everybody turned against me and where they're talking about bodies not hitting the bottoms of mine shafts, okay? And I had gotten chased out. I had basically left that town to try to escape to, and there was one person that I kind of knew, I had just met, but I didn't know where else to go. And unfortunately, I made another wrong decision because I ended up finding out later this was a person that, again, was sent into my life to try to keep tabs on me. But it was during this time period that I was there with him, trying to finish up that probation from that first fake charge that was put on my record, but about to be taken off. And this particular night, I decided to have a couple of drinks because I had just gotten a job as a manager at this particular casino, and was celebrating and went out and then won a bunch of money and then ran into somebody that I knew, and so we stayed out for a little bit through that night. And then that night he just disappears, and all of a sudden I'm being chased now. And I'm trying to get away from this person. I am not trying to drive. But long story short, I end up having to get into my vehicle thinking that if I get in here, they'll leave. Well, they didn't leave the parking garage. So there was one casino, and then across the street was another parking garage. And all I was going to do just to get away because they wouldn't leave was just drive across. Well, there was a cop that was positioned right outside of this particular parking garage. And I know it was a setup, but yet at the same time, when I got arrested, and one of the things I remember saying was, I finally feel safe, because at least here I know that I'm safe and nothing's going to happen to me in jail. That's a scary thought, right? When jail feels like the only safe space, right? So I start my dedicated, because now I have 49 days too where I'm forced to be sober. I can't just accidentally fall back on, be like, yeah, I'm quitting drinking, and then accidentally go, oh wait, nope, I'm scared, nope, we're gonna numb out because I'm freaked out. You don't have that option now. So 49 days of clean, and then when I got out of jail, obviously had to start probation right away. So that was a 6-year, a total. Well, it was actually 4 years, but this was when COVID was right before COVID. So court proceedings went through COVID and it extended it. So it ended up being a total of 6 years off of, a 4-year probation. I was facing jail time initially. I manifested myself out of this jail time. This is where I'm starting to learn my powers and my skills, but I still have no idea. But I'm just starting to kind of gain the momentum into that. So, okay, so that DUI had happened, and I had to now have another, case, and that was another way that freaked me out, because this is another way that they can still try to keep tabs of me. And they did try to mess with the system. They tried messing with a lawyer that I had the money to try to purchase at one point. They got him to try to turn against me, and I figured it out, and I called him on it. And sure enough, I got my money back within 24 hours. I had gone into his past and saw that he was a dirty lawyer that worked for dirty people. And like I say, the stories go on and on and on about this. It was just one thing after another. And I, was so exhausted. So like I say, then I finally, start this, working for this auto parts, then working for the pet boarding to start working with animals, and find this beautiful couple that took me in as their own family. But like I say, I was renting a complete apartment from them, this beautiful space that was just mine, and they let me just heal, because I said, listen, you guys, I am so not in a good space. I'm so scared of life right now. I'm scared of things and people, and I just want to work and try to, save money and, heal me and my cats. I remember, because basically for those 3 years, I slept with one eye open, and so I really couldn't sleep. And so during that time period when I first started healing on the top of this beautiful mountain, which I called my beautiful healing space, the first time I literally felt, I felt good for the first time, even though I was crying a lot because I started therapy right away. I was able to start with my first therapist, the first of 10, but still. And I mean, I was dedicated. This is where, so this now brings us back about 7 years ago from now. So I had, just to kind of sum it up, I had about 20 years that the universe was trying to wake me up, right? And they're sending in all these mentally ill, narcissistic, psychopathic people mirroring this back at me. And I'm like, what? Like, what's happening? Why is, like, what am I trying to be told here? And, like I say, so I slept so much those first, like, that first half a year, I think. I mean, I'd go to work and I'd come back, and I was also learning how to cultivate a beautiful healing space, which I know how to do very well now. And that's extremely important, by the way, is ensuring that you have a beautiful space to come home to where you feel safe, even if it's just one little corner of a room, you know, creating yourself that altar and that safe space where you just need that to start, you know, to start building. And again, the fact that I knew that better existed. It was the couple that I was able to rent from in this $1 million home on the top of this mountain that showed me what a healthy, good-looking family looks like. They showed me so much unconditional love, more than I experienced in the entire 40 years of my first part of my life from my own family members. This is where, you know, like I say, I cultivated not just a space of healing. I started doing sound therapy, breath work. The universe was guiding me at this point. My higher self was guiding me. It was like I went into this, once my nervous system knew you're safe, all of a sudden my higher self took over and was like, ready? We're gonna help you out here a little bit here. And because I remember things just kind of started happening for me and falling into place in ways where I was like, how did that just happen? Awesome. Like, that is amazing. And it was so beautiful, you guys. It is like, so it's this that I self-taught myself, because at this point now, like I say, on top of the therapy that I'm doing, and let me just jump to that a second really quick. Because what this con man, through his gang stalking and everything, like, my nervous system was shot. Besides what I had to deal with the first 40 years of my life with my own family members. But this part just flipped it. Like, this took me to a whole, like, I mean, I'm having panic attacks daily. It sucked. And I definitely don't wish that upon my worst enemy. However, and crazy anxiety. I felt so awkward. I'm also, like I say, now learning how to be sober and communicate with people for the first time in years, sober. That was weird, because basically it was like trying to learn how to speak again for the first time at the age of 40, you know? And so I'm sober, I'm healing with all intentions to keep that, like, because now I'm understanding, oh, alcohol is a pathway. You know, any drug use, alcohol, codependency, all these addictions are entrance points for these negative and low vibrational energies and entities to access us. Oh, okay. So kind of starting to have a little grasp of the spiritual side, but not where I am today, not where I wish I would have been. But there was so much I was learning, because on top of trying to decompress this fear state that I had been living in and survival state I had been living in for 3 years, which, by the way, took me 3 years to just heal from just that part. It was that after going into the third year that I was finally able to start healing my childhood wounds from, you know, the stuff that I spoke about in the first video, of my timeline, all the abuse and addictive personalities and, narcissistic, just karmic, emotionally immature, um, parasitic, just life that I grew up in. And like I say, my soul chose to do this. This was my choice, believe it or not. And so, like I say, again, the reason I feel I'm supposed to be telling my story is because I am not in victimhood mentality about this anymore. This is, I'm past, for the most part of it, past all the anger, definitely past all the shame and guilt, because now I understand that a lot of that shame and guilt wasn't even mine. It was projected onto me from those that had their own guilts and shame, that didn't want to process it for themselves, stealing my light to keep, anyways, you all know how that works. So, okay, so what else was happening during this time? Because this is, like I say, a lot's happening. And so I am seeing therapy, like I'm doing EMDR therapy 2 times a week diligently, not skipping a beat. And so we're talking some pretty intense trauma therapy. And like I said, the fact that it took me so long to process what had happened to me should just show you how intense that affected me. That it took, because I mean, we'd process like 2 hours every week for 4 years, you guys. But the first, like I say, 2 to 3, I'm able to go, okay, I can finally say that I'm past this guy who conned me, scammed me, and all the gang stalking and that, because part of what they kept trying to do, and the other part of moving up into this house on top of the mountain, was I was finally in a safe space where I was not accessible to these people that were supposed to be tracking me anymore. So that also helped eradicate them from my reality, and allowed me to have the ability to raise my vibration so that I could also raise above, because that's part of this journey, is raising above those low vibrations, because then they just don't exist and they can't reach you. That was an understanding I had to get to as well. So so I heal in the first 2 years from him. I'm able to start the healing of my childhood stuff from my parents, and growing up in that toxic, dysfunctional, parasitic environment. But now at this point, you got to remember, from the moment that I left the state where my parents, I left initially wanting to heal without them, after I was remembered, after they neglected to tell me because of their own reasons to try to get back at me for whatever reason, to not tell me that my grandpa had passed. That from that point of leaving the state where I said, they are not family if they want to do this to me. Apparently I have to do this healing on my own, because every step forward was 10 steps back with them around. And so again, it was not an easy decision to make, to say, I have to out my family. You just have to do it. And so I'll be able to speak more on that for people too, because I know that that is something that people that are doing it for the right reasons struggle with, because I know I did. I mean, I had to stop celebrating holidays, which was a good thing anyways. And, but at the same time, it was because initially it would bring too much sadness. Like I would cry thinking like, I would be celebrating with my family right now. So that was a reason I stopped. But then, kind of went into, well, the holidays are bullshit anyways. It's just a way to market and get more money for the greedy, and the one percenters. So, okay. So from the point at which I stopped, I made a point to say, I have to heal to become stronger first before I can re-immerse myself back into my family, so that I can go, you are who you are if you don't want to heal with me, and accept that and be able to move forward. But I needed to get myself strong enough so that I didn't allow them to keep pulling me back down into their icky parasitic stew. That it would be like, okay, I'm going to still be up here and I'll still love you even though you want to be down here. But we might just have to do it from apart. But so the reason that they could not find me and I became invisible for them is a couple different things. During that process, when I was trying to escape from the gang stalking, I read a lot of books from hackers about how to be invisible. And so that I was knowing how to be invisible from them. That equated to me becoming invisible to my family, but that wasn't my intention for that. also through that process, because like I told you, they would hack into all my electronics and I had to constantly get new phones. So my phone number was changing all the time. Also, my address was changing constantly. But part of learning how to be invisible is you learn how to work with all that stuff too to keep yourself safe. It's kind of like in a witness protection, similar type of concept. In fact, one of my probation officers at the time was like, "You want to consider witness protection?" And we discussed that. That's how bad. Like, she was part of this with me. There's people that know what I dealt with, and were very supportive. You know, again, I didn't have a family to support me through this kind of stuff, so I had to rely on meeting people that cared in the way that I wanted to be able to care and have, and be cared for. So from that moment of in 2017 up in, or where I left and had no contact with my family, the intentions were to try to heal as fast as possible, and so that I could reach back out to them. But after 3 years was taken, those first 3 years were taken by the gang stalking and the con man, and then it took another 2 to 3 years to heal from that. Now I'm 6 years into not speaking to my family, and all of a sudden now, and we're at, like I say, six, wait, not six, yeah, okay, yeah, 6 years into that, and all of a sudden, sorry, I just lost train of thought. Okay, so after that 6 years, I mean, so that's time period where I'm like, oh, I'm not anywhere near, I'm not closer to healing what I needed to heal in order to reach out to my family. I finally felt like I was in a safe or a better place where I felt like I had these gang stalkers and this con man off my back, so that I wasn't feeling so freaked out that I would be bringing them home with me if I had reached out to any family members. However, the whole reason why I had done that, I hadn't done yet. So 6 years of my life was just boosh, And so now I'm finally able to start processing childhood stuff. So we go deep into father childhood healing, trauma therapy. Like I say, EMDR, we're doing it twice a week still. And I got through a lot of good healing work regarding my dad, and his how abusive he was with me, and trying to get through forgiveness and things like that, about the scenarios where he was how he was with me. And so then, and like I say, again, through this period, they're asking me about my mom, but like I say, my dad really overshadowed the bullying, the gaslighting, the manipulation, more so than my mom, that I was aware of. And so, and when I was drinking, since there's mental illness and bipolar on that side of the family, that was fun for her. When she had that with me, I was a fun person for her. So there were more times, and I was drinking too. So it's like I couldn't see as many hurtful things that were happening to me from her that I could from my dad. So anyways, like I said, a lot of that focus once I started childhood therapy, trauma therapy, was me understanding that I getting through a lot of the dad stuff, and it was happening. And I was starting to feel like, oh, okay, I'm getting closer. Cool, because one of the other things I had to keep in mind is my dad had been really sick. Up to this point. Like I say, he had polyarthritis. He had gotten on prednisone, which gave him a lung disease, and the lung disease was really taking him down fast. So a concern of mine was always, I'm racing against the clock, because heaven forbid my dad dies while I'm trying to heal myself to get back to them. That was always a fear and a concern, and I had to literally prep myself in case that had happened, because I had watched a friend go through that exact same scenario, and it messed him up hard to not have that ability to have gone back to your family when you were in a space of not talking to them. So I had known better than to not let that scenario happen. But what had happened was, okay, so I start the therapy, or as I'm doing that therapy, I'm as well now, because, okay, about 2020, 2021, I finally get another new laptop, finally another safe phone, where I felt that I had the right application set up to keep me safe and protected from the potential of hackers, at least making it a little bit harder for them. And now having an understanding, because this was another area, I started diving into cybersecurity and trying to have an understanding of that so that I could, again, try to stay a step ahead of the people trying to con me and scam me, hack me, and all this kind of stuff, gang stalk me. So what I had accomplished during this time period on top of that therapy, so it's like I'd go to work, I'd wake up in this beautiful like healing space, and I'd have therapy twice a week, and I'd be processing outside of that on my own. I'm also doing sound therapy. I'm taking classes in that. I'm taking classes in breath work. I'm taking classes in empathic, intuitive childhood trauma work. This was a course that I took from, her name is Wendy DeRosa, and she was awesome. She focused on the lower three chakras. And now it's at, okay, well, I got to back up here a second. So, because there's so much that happens now, so for these like last 3 years even, because so that brings us up to like April of 2022, and the people I was living from in this $1 million home decided they wanted to move back to their home state. And this was very sad because I knew I was never going to find another place, especially at the rate I was paying. So beautiful, and it was just like it helped me think of an idea that I will eventually be I'm sure figuring out how to do at some point. But it was, it was just beautiful. Like I created and cultivated the most beautiful healing space for myself that we all should have. And I know I did this intuitively, and this is all self-taught, as well as my higher self sending me nuggets, sending me constant nuggets, keeping me in flow state. And I had no idea what any of this was yet. I just was flowing, and it felt amazing. And I'm working with animals, and I'm one of the other jobs I took on was just cleaning cabins because I could go into spaces, still process, still, listen to my podcast, listen to books, and, still be learning while I'm working and making money and trying to rebuild. And it was this beautiful, like, just fun. I was just flowing and trying to rebuild and get myself to a place where at the time I kept thinking, I need to have these certifications in order to be, seen as a viable person that can provide my light, my support, my guidance to others. I didn't know yet what my superhero powers were at this point. And I was doing them just naturally. And, but I don't know this till later. So, okay, now where we're at is I had to leave that house so that the couple could move. And that was very sad to leave them as well as the space. But this was as well a time where I was like, okay, I didn't feel safe living on my own while I was healing. And that's why that particular environment was perfect for me to rent a mother-in-law unit from people that were always home all the time, because it always made me feel like my spaces were safe, as well as where I had positioned myself on the top of a mountain where it made it harder for people to just do drive-bys because you would be like, oh, that's a weird new person. So what had happened was, as I moved in with the next door neighbors for another, for 3 months, while I tried to find my place that I was going to rent on my own for the first time now again, where I'm like, okay, I think I finally feel strong enough that I feel like I'm ready to have my own space and feel safe. Even when I leave the house, to know that my cats are going to be okay. So the first house that I get from this moment is the first of 10 mold homes. So now from August of 2022 up until currently, up until March of 2025, April of 2025, I moved 10 times from 10 different mold homes. And so I had 2 years. Okay, think about this. I had 2 years of, like I say, I laugh because it was the happiest times of my life, even though I was crying the most I've ever cried in my life. Because number one, I was allowed to cry, and I gave myself permission. And I realized that that was a release mechanism for me, as well as a happy expression as well. But I was able to have this time now where I just lost my train of thought. Hold on. Okay, well, I kind of forgot where my thought process was going to be, but here. Okay, so again, July 2022, I move into my what's we're going to call mold house number 1. And previous to this, I want to keep in mind that I was dealing with some stomach issues, and I'm sure, obviously, from being in survival mode hot for 3 years, as well as being in survival mode my whole life, so basically for 40 some years, my stomach was all tore up. And the doctors at the time gave me omeprazole and put me on a really high dosage of like 40 milligrams 2 times a day. And I remember people were like, that's really high. I was on that for I think 2, maybe even 3 years. So I know that this contributed to the imbalance of my microbiome and my pH and my good and my bad bacteria, my gut health. As I now come into this mold house, this mold that was infested with mold. And I did not know because his was mostly unseen, but there was some mold that I was able to see under his sink, his kitchen sink, where it was leaking when I first moved in. But again, we're so not trained to think about this as being something that we need to pay attention to because there's a reason for this. And I'll get into all that in a different video. Don't you hold on more for that one because I got some good nuggets of info there, people. But the first house, like I say, it was my own first space. And I ended up finding out there was mold because me and my cats start getting really sick about January of 2023. I would say it started about November of 2022, which is when I also started Wendy DeRosa's intuitive empathic childhood trauma healing coursework in class. Which is interesting because again, I went to start healing some deep seated stuff. And that's when again, powers that were and any connecting, energies were like, oh, hell no, we're not letting you go that easy. You can't release us like that. And because I still had, maybe bad habits of eating within my eating, because again, I'm on probation now and I am not drinking, nor do I want to. I'm 2 years into, well, actually, I didn't start probation until 2021, but I'm well into sobriety and yeah, and also understanding why I won't be doing it again. But I drank so much at the end that it honest to God, makes me sick to ingest. So at this point, and anyways, so I had the home tested. I figured out ways to do that. That was an experience. Found out that it had 3 of the most toxic molds out of 5 in the house. So then proceed to still think a little attached to Western medicine still. So proceed to go to 19 specialists who basically I'm leaving their office bawling because they want to act as if I'm going crazy and making up all my pain and everything. And so I was working with a lawyer at the time about this mold house, and he suggested immune doctor because I had originally started investigating and starting to seek out functional medicine and naturopaths. But unfortunately, I was at a place where I did not have the money to be able to afford to have that type of assistance. And then especially once my cats got sick, the vet bills were insane, and it was literally, and I wasn't going to be a parent like my parents were to me and not help me. I would spend my last dollar to save my cats, my babies, if it meant saving them and me not eating. I did not grow up that way, and I wanted to be that mother to them that I didn't receive. You know what I mean? Like, so I find out that it's mold. 19 specialists. I can't afford a functional doctor, so I start researching by watching summits of functional doctors and them talking about basically having to learn the anatomy of a body again in a way more profound way, because now I can feel what I'm talking about and learning. But then also there was something else I was just going to say. Okay. Okay, so sorry, I forgot, but okay. Yep. Oh, so I go to this immune doctor, and when I had the blood work done at Western Medicine and they're telling me, you don't have mold exposure, the immune doctor's going, yes, you do have mold exposure. You have inflammation issues. You also have SIBO, which is small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. And so then this is where, like I say, I realized that if I didn't try to fix this within myself on a physical level now and heal myself on a physical level, that this could get nasty. And then really started seeing how this is the root cause of a lot of people's illnesses, because inflammation is the root of all physical illness, all physical dis-ease. And really started just focusing hard. I had already been organic, but was super organic at this point and eating very clean and raw as much as possible. Due to what had happened to me before I could figure it out and start turning this around. I mean, I was at a place where my enzymes were not breaking down my food, so I could barely eat. And I was down to eating just bone broth and drinking coconut water, basically learning how to intermittently fast, learning how to detox. So learning all the things that we all should be doing anyways when we attend to, or when we take this spiritual awakening and conscious awakening on. I was being, like I say, this is the universe was just putting these things in the path, like, oh, it's time for you to learn this. It's time for you to learn this. And not only are you going to learn how to do this for yourself and heal yourself, and you'll be self-taught, you'll be able to help others. And again, this is always my silver lining for everything. Well, I guess I had to go through that so that I could help others navigate this, because one of the things I ran across during this process is finding out that people that when you get mold exposure, the Western doctors try to make it look like you don't have anything, or they'll try to give you a medication to cover it up, to make it look like it's something else and call it something else, and then just give you medication that's only masking. It's definitely not helping you. It's not healing you. It's probably potentially making something else worse within your body. And for instance, like when they gave me the omeprazole, I've recently had an intuition telling me that I'm sure that omeprazole, granted there was a lot of other factors, the drinking, drug use, smoking, all that of course contributed, the toxins of the glyphosates and air and everything. But there was also, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. But anyways, you get where I was trying to go. Okay, so after this, I move into that place in August of 2022. I don't find this out until 2 years later, but apparently my dad passes in September of that year, right after I move into the first mold house, which is very interesting because he also, because I now know what a mold belly, inflammation belly looks like versus a overweight belly. There's a difference. It's significantly different. It almost looks like you're pregnant when you have inflammation belly. And I knew that, so I move into this first mold house like a month or two before my dad passes. But I don't know this yet because I'm still not talking to my family, okay? So I move out of that one. Okay, so then like I say, to not get into the specifics here, again, now from 2023, one other thing I did is I started another class. Okay, so this is where this comes about me doing this. I started a class with Jocelyn Starfeather, who, if this resonates for you, look her up. She's awesome. She was definitely an initial coach that was sent to me. And I started her Soul's Purpose business class. It was a year-long class that I was planning to take to start figuring out how I was going to set up my Soul's Purpose business regarding my healing and how I was going to help, what my role and how I was going to utilize my superhero powers that I was still learning on how to help the collective. So I start that right as I'm getting sick, right as my cats are getting sick. And then we proceed. I end up from January of 2023, I start doing doctor's visits. By March of 23, I'm in an emergency room with 10 kidney stones. And by the way, I know a trick, or I have an herb that zapped them all, that I did. I did not have the doctors help me with that, but I had all 10 of them zapped on my own. I can tell you more about that too. Again, I learned how to heal 8 10 times over, people, because from January of 2023, when I started the Soul's Purpose business class, and the whole point was learning how to promote a business or start a business online through social media. And when I started it, no way did I think this was going to be happening. In fact, I kept saying, no, no, no. See, like, I've been through something where, like, I'm not going to be putting myself online like that, leaving myself open for that. And that's how my mind was back then about it, my thought process. But what had happened is yeah, like, it's so funny because from that point, that's where 3 years, almost 2.5 years ago, is where the universe was trying to get me to tell my story. I think at that point, because my my classmates at the time, everybody that would hear my story when I would tell it, they're like, "Wow, you need to what an inspirational story! You need to write about, you need to tell about it. You need to do things. You need to get this out." And I was like, yeah, I know, I have been writing. I'm in the process of figuring out how to talk about all this because there's so much, and how do I, how, and, start a blog and this and that and all these ideas. And this is where this happening 2.5 years later has been in the making for like 2.5 years. The universe has been trying to get me to gently nudge me into speaking this to the public, to the collective. And so, because then, like I say, so in March, I'm in the emergency room with 10 kidney stones, but I'm also feeling this hard pain, and it was because since with the SIBO, my food wasn't digesting and it was getting stuck in my intestines, creating a pain and a weight that was unbearable. And I move out of that place finally, it was April of 2023. And it's weird because all my work also kind of fell out from under me. But then I ended up getting this other really cool, I cultivated and manifested another really cool way for me to make money, that I was still utilizing this particular job to be outside with Mother Earth, be in my own space, to be able to heal. And if I needed to cry, I could cry while I'm working. You know what I mean? Like, I could just process all day long if I wanted to, which I was, because again, I don't do anything half-assed. I go at it all on, full on. So then let's see here. So after I get diagnosed, finally in January or June, I had found out about the house being mold, being too toxic with mold. Get out of it, move into my next place. This ended up being another crazy scenario where I move in with a person who ended up pulling some crazy religious, wanted to seance me. This is where I find out that I have a history regarding around, being like a witch and things like that. And I'm being called to learn more about this information, obviously a good witch, but that comes out. But then this woman, she also has a moldy house, on top of the fact that she turns against me and tries to get this priest to come in, and it got all weird. And so again, about every 2 to 4 months, I am moving, and I move, like I say, 10 times in 2 years. It just moves me around. It was the third mold house where my cats, because I had gotten them finally to a place, I had realized Western vets were just as ridiculous and non-essential as Western medicine is. I mean, non-essential in the way that obviously for certain things like broken arms and whatnot, we need that, but not for any illnesses, for sure. We can heal ourselves. Our bodies can heal ourselves. And so I'm going to work, and I am using my my work time to be able to heal. But then when I'm at home, because when I was sick at first, before I could start feeling better, I barely had enough energy to go do a 5-hour day. It was just barely. And because of the love of the animals, I was always all around, and and just being able to be in my own, I had cultivated a life where I didn't have to have the influence of other energies of people for a minute. I basically started hermit mode back in 2019 prior to COVID starting, and have only just recently kind of started to wiggle my way out of it. So have more or less been in hermit mode for 6 years. And let's see here. I was, like I say, educating myself in just exposing myself to functional doctor summits so that I could, it was any way that I could try to get free information, where I was only having enough money at the time, because I started being able to get money initially when I started the healing, but then it all got taken away when like money was accruing and I had money in my savings finally, but it was all getting taken away to try to heal me and my cats. And because I am a mama that, like I say, would have spent my last dollar on my cats to heal them, that's exactly what I did. Is I basically spent any money I had to try to heal them. And I had gotten to a place with them realizing that the animal human healing looks very similar. You just have to adjust dosages, obviously, but that, you know, you can work with the same types of herbs and whatnot with your animals. Is that I realized that I've lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry, people. Okay, well, so anyways, oh yeah, so I am educating myself in this moment as I'm sick, again, all by myself. And by the way, those 10 times I had to move were 10 times I had to move by myself with my cats. That's what we were getting up to. Mold House 3. I had gotten my cats to a space of being well enough to start like seeing progress in them as well as myself. But again, I was putting more attention to them than I was myself. So I think you'll hear why I say that here in a second. But the third mold house was the worst. He had 4 of the most toxic molds after I tested it. And yeah, like I got sick. I had just gotten better, you know, started getting turned around from my sickness from the previous house. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks into living in this new, or this, yeah, person's place, because I'm renting all these times, I get really sick again, and so do my cats. And this time their little bodies just couldn't handle it. And they both stroked out 2 months away, almost 2 months to the day from each other. The first one went, Liger went in December of 2023 and December 3rd, and then Ty, or December 4th, and then Ty's was February 3rd of 2024. I had had them for 19 years. They were my babies, and that was where I got to experience how to process grieving, and then learning how to understand that, you know, they just transitioned and their energies that are going to be more helpful for me on this side. And I know, again, going back to why they chose to pass is because they knew that while they were still with me, that I would have been neglecting myself to make sure that they had what they needed. So all that had happened, and then so now basically since January or February of 2024 up until recent, so over a little over a year, about a year and a half, for the first time in 19 years, I've been doing this completely by myself. And something had happened last year on October 8th, or the day before October 8th. There had been a lot that I had been processing, and I had been really working finally on my spiritual side of things, understanding that I needed spiritual protection, and that you need as above, so below, and just finally having an understanding that this is why I'm still dealing with issues getting in the way, because I'd be like, I'm doing everything right. Why am I still getting like 1 step forward is 2 steps back? You know, there's not drinking, there's I've gotten all the addictions away. I have no codependencies. I love my alone time because I can finally find out who I am for the first time in my life. And that was so much fun because I was able to do things that I had always wanted to do in my life, like painting and singing and playing my instruments again, and just so many different things, learning that I loved gardening, and these were things too that were just so healing and beautiful, and getting back into working out and Tai Chi and yoga and Qigong and breath work, knowing that that was a vital part of this, knowing that sound therapy is huge. and really incorporating all this, taking everything that I had learned and just putting it all together. And it was great. It was beautiful, right? So, I forget, I'm kind of lost where I'm at right now. I kind of want to see what else I had written down here. Okay, so, oh yeah, so, okay. So I call out to the universe, and I had been going to this Buddhist monastery, and I was walking around a Siddhartha at the time, and I called out to the universe. I said, okay, send me a sign. I need to know what to do. Like, I had been kind of debating a little bit, like, do I go home? Is it time for me? Am I strong enough? Can I reach out? Because I had been concerned at what's happened to my dad. If my dad was still with us, I wanted to make it back before that point. And I felt like it was time for me to take what I had learned and bring it back home and see if anybody else wanted to heal with me. Not force it on anybody, but see if they did. And if not, be strong enough to be like, you are who you are. I respect that. And I don't care that you don't respect me anymore. I'm just going to live my life because now I know who I am. And then the next day, I get literally just let go from my job. And this was a job that me and the employer, we loved each other, and I was their only employee. So that's when I knew it was a huge sign where I was like, okay, universe is saying go home. Well, and so now I was like, okay, but, and I just was trying to figure out how to do this. And because now we were approaching like 7-8 years that I had spoken to my family. And it was just like, I'm having a hard enough time trying to figure out how to articulate this and just a way to the collective. How do I do this to my family too? And had secondary scamming happen to them, had they had impersonations of me contacting them, and because I know that there had been some towards me by my sister, like that somebody, either she called me in a super nasty way or somebody impersonated her. And that's what I wanted to believe for the longest time, but I actually found out that it was her, but that's a different story. So anyways, I get that sign. And then on October 16th, going into the night of October 16th, going into the 17th, I have a dream, a very vivid dream, where my dad is in this dream with me. And I'd never dreamt about my dad previous. Ever. But the one more important thing about this dream is my dad was loving in this dream. And I never experienced a loving dad, ever. And it was calm and peaceful. And I felt like I could talk with him. And I remember I was just like, it felt so good. I was like, and I remember like he was sitting down on a chair and like I put my arm up on his leg, and like that definitely never existed. Like it felt nice though, I was like, cool. He was giving me a message, but there weren't words that were exchanged in the dream, but it was something like that I received where when I woke up bawling, crying, and I'm like, oh my God. Like there was like an urgent message that I felt like I received from him, basically saying, it's time for you to go home. Something's wrong. Something you need. It's time for you to go home. That was what I took from this. This is what it felt like the dream was telling me. So it takes me 2 days to gain up the courage to call my family. Like, isn't that sad? You know what I mean? Like, I have no reason, but this is the fear that had been, instilled for so long. And I just didn't know how to talk about all this. Cause it's obviously you've seen, we're, I think about 3 hours into this, people. And this is, this is the tip of the iceberg is all you're really getting from this. All the meat and potatoes will be in later communications. However, finally I call first my brother, and then my mom, and then my sister. I never get a call back from my sister right away. My brother calls me back. Or no, I didn't have my mom's number. I knew my sister's number, and I found my brother's number, because that was one of the things once I was able to start organizing my stuff a couple years back, is that all of a sudden, and they would do this, the people that would steal your stuff to mess with you would sometimes put your stuff back. Well, they had put my contact book back, but some of they had ripped a lot of pages out. One of the pages still at least had my brother's number, did not have my mom's number. So when I called my brother, it was to get my mom's number. And so my brother calls me back. This is where I find out for the first time this past October. So like I say, a little over 2 years after he had transitioned, that my dad had passed. So the worst fear had come true for me. And so then I ended up having to, then my brother says, call mom. There's something, there's so much more going on with her. And, she's not handling the death really well, and she's drinking a lot. Well, they didn't even know how much she was drinking, that I ended up finding out. But there was talk about this and that she had like a lot of accidents because of the drinking to her body. And so then I talked to my mom, and what I'm trying to say is that I'd like to come home now and heal in my, finish my physical, because I was still very sick, physically, as well as just, mentally exhausted, obviously, from everything I've just spoke to you guys about. This is exhausting, right? Exhausting. If I didn't have, this is why the prerequisite to this type of healing, people, is you need to have the will to know that it does get better, period. But so my goal is to go back and live at my hometown, like the house that I grew up in. My mom says that she's doing the snowbird thing down south, and that she's currently down south with her new boyfriend, only 2 years after my dad has passed, that had met this new boyfriend a year previous. This guy sounds sketchy, sounds very similar to the guy that conned me. And my mom had an inheritance, so there was suspicion wrapped around that. And that was one of the things I kept thinking, maybe that's what my dad was talking to me about in my dream, is that my mom was in danger because of this guy that she's dating. And and the reason I say that is because my mom convinces me not to go and stay back at the house, because she's like, you can go back to the house, but you'll be there by yourself until we come back in the spring, which I would have been fine with. And that's actually what I was wanting to do. I wanted my mom there so we could start reuniting again, but at the same time, I just wanted to be someplace where I felt safe. And even though, as I've explained, my home life was not safe for me, it was way more safe than what I had experienced. And just that familiarity of having people around, even though they weren't the most, loving and caring people, at least they knew me, and I could have people finally around me that I thought knew me. And that would never hurt me on purpose, so I thought. And so when I reach out to my mom, so she says, why don't you come down south with me and stay with me through these months that I'm down here, which was going to be a total of, let's see here, like 5 months. And, you can just relax and rest here with us and rebalance and recoup. And then we can all go home, me, the boyfriend, and her. And that was the other weird part for me, is I'm like, I don't know how comfortable I feel with this stranger, let alone this, like, it seems weird. I did some background work on him. There was some sketchiness to him, which just made me feel even more so like, I think I need to go down there. I think I'm supposed to be down there. If at the very least, to help my mom start her grieving process over my dad. Because what I had heard when everybody was telling me she had started drinking is they said, well, of course, she's numbing out. She's in pain. She's just lost the person she's been married to for as old as I was at the time. So 46 years. Well, I guess when he passed, it would have been 44 years. And so I make the decision to go down there in December of 2024. And by the second week of me being there, I see the first explosion of my mother's mental illness pop out of her. I find out previous to this that bipolar runs on her side of the family, because one of my cousins comes out with a book about it. And I'm like, oh my God, see, I didn't even see this the whole time. The universe sent me that bipolar person that I dated on and on for 10 years to be like, here, see, let's open your eyes to this. This is within your family. And I couldn't see it. So I'm like, okay. And so then, because she's drinking daily. And I'm watching her have manic moments daily. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is the great, like, I can definitely look back on her life and go, oh yeah, I guess I could have seen moments where this mental illness was popping out of her, but I kept going, holy shit, I think the grieving of my dad's, or the lack of grieving about my dad's passing has triggered, more of this, trauma in her, and is instigating and catalyzing more of this, unprocessed trauma within her, which is showing itself as bipolar for her. In one of the ways, at least, right? So, like I say, and I obviously know what this looks like extremely well, because not only did I live with it for 10 years and had to help his family understand it and educate them on it, I had to learn about it myself so that I knew how to understand it and either learn how to help him or learn if I had to not be part of that anymore. So I was just like, wow, I can't believe I didn't see that. Well, so, and the reason that happened is she was all drunk and she came and she swung at me, but for no reason. Like, I literally came in to my mom going, Mom, the whole reason of this, separation and what I was doing is to learn how to love in the way we were never taught to love, so that I could love myself, know who I am, and to bring that love into the family in a way that we've never experienced. I wanted to do that. So I come in with only love, and she's got all this anger and hate inside of her, and the every day, because her and her boyfriend, and he's older than she is, like by 5 years, and he's in his 70s, and they're drinking like they're 20-year-old college students on spring break with dirty sugary shots of just all that kind of thing happening. And I'm like, oh my God, like, did I just make another mistake by coming down here? This is where you go, oh God, I did it again. Now I'm stuck, because now I'm like, how the hell do I get out? Because I said to her, Mom, I want to go home. And she was definitely trying to not let me go home. Well, my sister is another scenario in this, where she is being angry at me for something that I didn't do. I don't know still to this day, but was now trying to get my mom to think that if I went home by myself, that I was going to steal from the family, I guess. And again, where any of this came from, I have no idea, because I've never stolen from people in my lifetime, and that has never been my character. And so the fact that this is where I'm starting to realize that, oh my God, my mom has been doing triangulation onto us kids, on top of the fact that she's been creating a false narrative about me the whole time I had been not talking to my family. But even before then, basically my whole life, is what I eventually find out. And then on my birthday of this year, my mom calls the cops on me. And at this place in this state where I don't know anybody, she knows I have no money. I'm getting sick because her fifth wheel camper is infested with mold so much, so badly. I start getting hard sick again. And, that was one of the reasons I'm like, let me go home so I can start to heal at the house. And I know you kept that clean. At least I hope you kept it clean. Like, I hope that it didn't go to shit after Dad died, like the camper, because that was the other part, is my mom was always a really clean person. And she started, like, it was like hoarder nasty status. And so when I got into the camper down there, I was trying to clean it for her and organize it and get her into a space of trying to get her into a healthy healing space, while she's got this whole different reality in her head, and in real time telling all my relatives a lie, a false narrative about who I am and what I've been doing my whole life that just simply was not true. And I find all this out while I'm down there with her. It was horrific and beyond anything that you can even understand how to try to wrap your mind around. And when I tried to reach out to the family, nobody wanted to call me back. And I have a large family. Nobody wanted to call me back and help me, because they thought I was this person, this false narrative person that my mom and my dad, when he was alive, had created this false person. They created who I was. Like, that was insane to wrap my mind around. It was like, why would you want to tell people that I'm this person, especially when I'm not? When I've watched families sit there and take care of their kids and protect them, and my mom was literally throwing me under the bus for no reason except for the reasons that she just wanted to project her issues onto me. And this is where I realized, holy shit, like, I might be dealing with an undiagnosed narcissistic diagnosis here. There's definitely narcissistic qualities, but, again, the reason that I throw these terms out was for me to understand that, oh my God, she's at such a low vibration and she has no intentions of healing, that she's only placating me to make me think that she wants me to do this, to get me to go along with things, in the same way that I watched the guy who conned me do it, who was a definite narcissist, psychopath, and that was given for sure documentation based off of the police that were like warning me, like, you better be careful, you're dating a psychopath. Well, all of a sudden I'm coming to the rationalization that, oh my God, like, here's the silver lining why I had to experience a narcissistic experience of fear and survival from this outside of the family perspective in such a scary way, is because the universe was trying to mirror back at me what I was dealing with within my own family unit, people. So when I reach out to my family to see if they'd help me, nobody would call me back, right? Because they think I'm some awful person, which I had never been to any of them. These were all just based off of her words. That's a powerful narcissist right there. They get people to believe things that aren't true. And many people, like, she was the puppeteer for all of these people, of my whole family, who I was always kind to and beautiful to. So it had no reason to assume I was anything negative, but it was because I realized she had been creating this false narrative for years and decades of my life, which was horrifically traumatizing for me. I was just like, here I am on this like healing journey for myself, with intentions to come back with so much love for my family, and all along I'm being undermined by my family, who is literally throwing me under the bus for no reason except for their own, unhealed issues. It was a big tower moment, dark night of the soul that just came down. Because, like I say, my mom calls the cops on me on my birthday. And the thing that she said to me that day was, opens up my door, doesn't say happy birthday, says, do you want me to do your laundry? All angry, like, at me, weirdly angry, like with this like angry undertone. And I said, no, I want to go home, Mom. She gets all angry. She's like, I don't know where you think you're going, but you're not going home to the family house, or something like that. And then goes, I'm calling the cops. And I'm crying, going, what is happening here? And yeah, so I end up in a really gross motel because I didn't have barely any money left, because my mom was supposed to be helping me a little bit financially at the same time, while I was healing physically, while I was still trying to heal mentally, while I was still in this healing space where I thought I was getting emotional support, as well as some financial support. But I came in with a little bit of money to help a little bit, or to what I had left with what I had left from everything from the previous state, and had just enough money to barely afford this hotel. And weirdly enough, the universe had sent this really creepy guy into my space that had a free airplane, or had a free ticket to get back to Minnesota, because he was actually from near my hometown. And I kept thinking too, like, as long as I can get back into the state, because I can't stay here. Like, I'm not going to have money to live here, and I don't know anybody that can help me. And so if I can get back into Minnesota, I have tons of family there, even though they're not reaching back out to me, and my brother and my sister, like, why, they'll be there. My sister would not contact me, would not call me. And still to this day, I have no idea why. And has some sort of anger against me. Again, have no understanding of that. And then my brother was, because of the false name, but again, a lot of this probably has to do with the triangulation that my mom and my dad had created between my brother, my sister, and I, to make them think things about me that just weren't true. And then obviously the con men, if there was any communication or impersonations done by them, that would have only instigated it even more. So then what happened is that I fly back with this guy. He ends up letting me stay at his house, thinking it was only going to be for like a night or two until I could, get a hold of some relatives. Nobody reaches out to me. My brother and sister-in-law are like, sorry, we have mold in the house. Like, you're trying to heal from mold. We can't have you in there. But also the house is too small, which it was. But then, but you could tell there was actually more underlying there that, because my opinion, family is family, and you help them, and they, you make a spot for them for family. At least that's what I watched in other true families that actually love each other. That's how they treat each other. But in these, very unhealed parasitic families, units, that's not how it works. So what had happened is I get here, and all of a sudden this guy, he seems like he's going to be okay, and he actually sets up a deal with me to say, hey, why don't you go ahead and you can live here. You can be my roommate. Well, after like a day or two, he's basically like, no, you have to be my girlfriend. And he's in his like 60s, or he was in his 60s or almost 70s, thinking that, a 47-year-old person is wanting to get with that. And not that that can't happen, but it's not, are you kidding me? I'm coming out of a trauma here, man. I'm not trying to get laid, nor am I just trying to have sex to, appease your codependency issues. You know what I mean? Like, if you're, trying to learn about me, that's not what I do. I've been celibate for 6 years, dude. Like, I'm not going to break down here for your unhealedness, and I don't need it like that. I don't need that to, have my worth anymore. Like, I'm not codependent anymore. So then, it was a day that we were going to go meet up with my brother and sister-in-law, go have lunch with them and see my niece, who I hadn't seen in, 7-8 years. Last time I had seen her was like 3 or 4. And the other niece was up at school, at a college. And so I go to meet them, and at this time, it transpires from the time that we make the appointment to go have the lunch until they come and get me, where I realize I have to get out of this guy's house. He's dangerous, like, because he literally started getting angry and getting aggressive that I wouldn't have sex with him. And so then my brother and sister-in-law pick me up. I have all my stuff, the stuff that I have with me. And we go to this restaurant, and my brother is like, well, let me call mom. I'm like, feel free. And so he calls her, and she's, sure enough, is like, she's not allowed in the house. We don't trust her. We think she's going to steal, which again, like, she's only continuing a lie that she's created about me that does not exist about me. And, it's obviously making my brother, which that's the other part though. It's like, I've never been that way for you. Like, that shouldn't be an option for you to even kind of believe. But again, narcissists are believable. That's what they do. That's how they get away with their manipulations and controlling of people, puppeteering of people. And my mom had the whole family puppeteered at this point and in control of all of them. Which, like you say, large family, it's impressive to think that my mom was that powerful. It was like, damn, and not in a good way either. So my brother and sister-in-law, we try to reach out to some friends and things like that. But at this point, I don't have contact for any old friends, and there was one, and we tried to reach out, and I still to this day don't know if she got the message, but so they're kind of forced to now have me stay in the house with them, and they said that that was okay because my niece was away at college, so we could kind of have me stay in her room. And then they had but it was still very unsure. It was like, here, we'll just have you here a couple of days until we can get you into something else. Well, like I say, my mom had burned the bridges with her lies about my life and who I was to everybody, so we couldn't get any of my family members to help let me have a place to stay. Just something simple, so that I could, heal physically. Because like I say, I'm coming off being sick from my mom's infested fifth wheel of mold. So I'm super sick again physically. And now, and like I say, I'm just coming out of hermit mode. So, and I'm dealing with all these people. And so that's really shocking. Now I have to actually get a job where it might have to be something where it's not, I'm not cultivating this like I was in the past. This is more like trying to be able to get money, to be able to start having money, to be able to find my own place again and to start over. And but you know, I was dedicated to getting back with a therapist because it was like, oh my god, now I got a whole new set of another whole new set of problems to get through. Not only was there that, there was talk about the fact that my real father might not be my real father, and it was just all this like dramatic, chaotic, like what kind of family did I put myself into on my soul contract? It's like, holy shit, anything less dramatic than this would have been so boring for my soul. So here, I'm going to try to get this closed out here in the next 5 minutes, guys. Sorry for it being so long, but this will hopefully be the end. And then I got it out and it's done. The story's been told. So I am I move in with them. They pretty much get to a place where they go, okay, you know, yeah, you can stay with us until you get, you know, to your next place. And I was very communicative with them. I felt like too much at times, like I usually am with most people. And I basically got back onto my healing path that I was on, which is, you know, it's about self-care, it's about eating right, being outside in nature, meditating, sound therapy, breath work, therapy if you need. So I'm doing all this and I'm, you know, to try to get out of the house. I'm spending as much time as I can outside, especially once it got nice out by the lakes. I missed all the water. And then like, and I'm going to the library to try to do my work on my business as well as my writing and with my therapist. And then I get this particular night, my sister-in-law, my brother come back from the bar because there's definite addiction issues and going on there too. But so they came back from their weekly bingo drinking extravaganza that they do. And I was doing my normal thing, you know, just chilling and being in my space and, you know, absorbing and learning and growing. And my niece at the time tries to start this really weird like conversation with me that basically is her trying to tell me that I need to get out of the house. And they had my niece doing this like so like I start crying because I'm just like, whoa, what is happening here? And then she gets weirdly angry. Well, so she goes and picks up my brother and sister-in-law and then tells them something else that apparently that she wanted to say happened to try to, I don't know, get me in trouble or something, I guess, because my brother and sister-in-law come home hot and started attacking me verbally in a way where they're like, why would, I'm gonna mama bear you, how dare you speak to our daughter this way? Like, I would never want to cause any harm to my niece ever. So that did not occur like that. No, stop talking, like trying to tell me what I'm saying, like so completely negating anything I'm saying. My brother, who I have taken care of like when he was younger and stood up for all the time, was attacking me in a way where I mean, I had never seen him like this. It was like the like demons had turned on in him and her. And so they just continue and all of a sudden they start this false narrative and they did the same thing my parents did. If you catch it in the part 1, they went to my work. They were trying to be sure I was going to my job. Again, was somebody thought that I would never want to go to work, and this particular job was a fun job for me. It was actually very something that I looked forward to in my day. But either way, I've never not gone to a job. Like again, I don't know where this whole I'm not working thing came into play. They go to my job, they ask, you know, is, you know, she here? Well, the owner's wife's name is also my name in a different way. So he thinks that they're talking about her. So they say she's at the other location and dirt to dirt. So they think that I've been lying about going to work based off of that, which, first of all, I said, well, you didn't call me the right name. That's her name. Secondly, why would I not have told you, like, if I would have gotten promoted to that store, that's a promotion. Why wouldn't I have told you about that? Thirdly, that's a 20-minute drive. I don't have the vehicle right now. How the hell would I get there? They're still yelling at me as if this is my fault that they're telling me something that they made up about me. So it sets me back into trigger mode from when my parents did this to me. Because I'm still trying to get over the shock of what just happened with my mom and what I was exposed to understanding about who she really is and this family I'm truly from. Trying to wrap my mind around that. And now the brother who I never, I always thought, like, I looked out for him in a way that I would never let anybody ever treat him like shit. And the way that he allowed his own family to just treat me like I was garbage it was just, it broke my heart in so many different ways. And I went into trigger mode and I started having a panic attack in the worst way possible. And I had not had a panic attack that bad in years. And the sad thing is his wife went to school for psychology. So shame on that, for that happening, for her like inducing that, because she just kept making it worse. And she was loving every minute of it. And it was horrific. It put me directly into fear mode. And that's when I spoke to my spirit team and I said, because they're basically like, you need to get out. You're not welcomed here. And all this stuff. And so and they're like, but you can have a couple of weeks, and it's like, that wasn't the plan. And they knew it because I was in communication. And where are you going on these days when you're not here? I'm like, I've been telling you where I've been going. It's not my fault if you don't want to listen, or if you want to assume what I'm saying is not true. That's in your own head and your own reality. But the fact that you think I'm lying, I don't know where that's coming from. And so that night, I was at my wit's end. I was like, I cannot believe my family is this parasitic and low vibrational, and they definitely don't want to heal. And that was the other thing is I kept getting more and more sick in my brother and sister-in-law's house, because out of all 10 homes I've been in, theirs was the worst infested. Mold was visible everywhere. It was disgusting, and I was getting so sick daily, so sick. The worst I had ever been, even from the very beginning that I got sick with it. And she was trying to also, like, I was bad because I was sick and I couldn't eat her food and this and that. And it was just like, I honestly saw more compassion from strangers than I did my own family. And they were just kicking me while I was down, sort of thing. And so I reached out, I'm crying, I'm having a panic attack. And I said, Spirit team, there's no way I can stay here another night. Like, it's not just physically taking me down. This is mentally just put an imprint on me that I've now realized I have to, for good, excommunicate or, emancipate myself from my whole family. And now going back to when I started this 7 years ago and had to start the healing process where I had to leave them, and then I didn't speak to my family for 7 years. That was my higher self guiding me into that space, knowing that that's where I should have stayed. But at the same time, I needed to see who my family truly was, because in my head, they were not this low vibrational. They were not this parasitic. I knew that there were issues, but I did not know the issues ran this deep. So the reason, like I say, I tell my story in such detail is not to point fingers, is not to point blame, is not to do anything with negative intentions. It's to inspire, to let you all know that I have risen above all this. Like, it took me some months to be able to do what I'm doing right now, because after all that happened, that last little bit here I just spoke about with my family, I'm not gonna lie, that shit took me back a bit. Like, and there was some anger that came out that I was like, yup, we gotta let this happen. And rightfully so, right? And the dark night of the soul, that was years and years. Just there was a final continuation, right? Well, like I say, think about if you've heard my whole timeline, two different parts, two different. The first one was about an hour and a half, hour and 40. This is about 2 hours now. Two parts worth of my timeline, and as condensed as I could possibly try to speak this. This is meant to inspire those of you who have dealt with anything that I've dealt with and more. Because the thing is, people, I did this again all by myself, and I self-taught. I was self-taught how to rise above all this all by myself. Like I say, I was guided to certain teachers and guides that helped me along this path. But this was all because I surrendered even when I didn't know I was surrendering at times, you know? And like I say, the fact of what I've realized, like I had to go down to the southern states to go stay with my mom and her boyfriend, to see who she really was. I had to come back to my home state to see and experience this moment with my brother and sister-in-law, to see that this is who they all are. I had to experience my family not supporting me to see who they all truly were and how unhealed they are and how none of them want to heal. Because all this time period that I've been healing, like I say, it was meant for me, but at the same time I kept going, now I'll know how to help any of them heal. Thinking that there would have been people that would have jumped on the boat. And so that meant that I was still allowing these energetic cord attachments that were holding me down, holding me back. That now that I know, I have released so much baggage. And you want to know how much growth and how fast I've been able to manifest things to the T since I have released? It's insane, people. And moving forward, my thoughts are that I will be talking more about that again, unless I get guided or I am guided by my guides to speak about anything else. But I definitely have so much, a wealth full of knowledge of how to heal, not just physically, emotionally, mentally, and now spiritually. And that's the other important part, is it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I really understood, and only then really started putting like this focus of as above, so below. Oh, there's a reason people make that saying. There is a reason for that saying. It's true. And it wasn't until I started really having respect for the spiritual side of things that my ascension and my awakening really took a turn. So again, I'm so sorry for how long these have been. If this resonates for anybody, let me know with either a like or even better, a comment would be to hear any, stories from others that understand, can resonate. And if this video has fallen into your feed, it's fallen into your feed for a reason. And especially if you've listened up until now, this is a good thing for you. Just know that, because I am on this amazing, beautiful new earth, new timeline that means you are too. Sending my love and my gratitude. Thank you all so much for listening.